Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily strategic briefing. It is Wednesday, March 18, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by AIRIA and DjamgaMind. Today, we are unraveling a series of major retreats and resets. OpenAI is abandoning its side quests to stop Anthropic from taking over the business world. Microsoft is redrawing its entire AI org chart to let Mustafa Suleyman chase superintelligence in-house. And Mistral is handing the keys to the kingdom to enterprise buyers with its new Forge platform. From GPT 5.4 Mini to the hardware-accelerated Vera Rubin platform, the industry is getting serious about results. Let's get into the news.
Imagine you're the CEO of OpenAI, right? You have literally the most famous tech product on Earth. You sparked this whole global revolution.
Right.
And yet you are sitting there in a company-wide meeting, listening to your head of applications stand up and just declare a code red survival panic.
Yeah, it's wild.
And why? Because, well, while you spent the last year burning millions of dollars in compute trying to make, an AI generate high-definition videos of skateboarding dogs.
Which are very cute, to be fair.
Very cute, yeah. But your biggest rival just quietly walked in the back door and stole the multi-billion-dollar enterprise contracts you actually need to, keep the lights on.
Yeah, I mean, it is the ultimate wake-up call. It's the harsh realization that generating a cute video it doesn't pay for a billion-dollar data center.
Exactly. So welcome to another deep dive. If you're joining us, whether you are, say, an enterprise IT leader staring at your budget, trying to figure out where to place your bets next quarter, or you're just an insanely curious learner trying to make sense of the absolute chaos happening behind the scenes in tech, right now you are in the right place.
Definitely.
Today, we are looking strictly past the flashy consumer headlines. We're ignoring the hype, and we're going to forensically examine a massive kind of hidden tectonic shift that is redefining the AI industry in early 2026.
We're basically dissecting the architecture of panic and, well, more importantly, the architecture of survival.
And to do exactly that, I have the perfect guide. Joining me today, stepping into their role as the lead systems strategist and forensic AI architect for DjamgaMind.
Happy to be here.
Their day-to-day focus is exactly what we need for this massive stack of internal leaks and org chart redraws we've compiled. We're talking corporate restructuring, agentic security, and arguably the most brutal, unforgiving metric in tech right now, the inference-to-value ratio.
Yeah, because we are well past the honeymoon phase of artificial intelligence.
Right.
The parlor tricks are over. Now, it is strictly about proving the economics. And that inference-to-value ratio is really the only metric capital markets actually care about right now.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that code red at OpenAI. According to this massive leak published by the Wall Street Journal, OpenAI is fundamentally overhauling its entire product strategy. I mean, they are ripping up the floorboards and pivoting hard to focus almost exclusively on coding tools and business workflows.
Yeah, it's a massive shift.
And the catalyst was Fidji Simo, their CEO of applications, flat out calling Anthropic's dominance in the enterprise sector a wake-up call.
Well, Anthropic has been absolutely relentless, right? For the last year, they basically ignored the consumer noise and hyper-focused on two specific releases, Claude Code and Cowork.
Right.
And to really understand why that triggered a code red in San Francisco, we have to look at how a Fortune 500 CIO views their compute spend.
Right, because an enterprise client, let's say a global logistics firm, they aren't paying for novelty.
Yeah.
If they're going to drop $50 million on an API contract, they are measuring the return on investment down to the decimal.
Maybe exactly.
They do not care if the model can write, a Shakespearean sonnet about a shipping container. They want it to parse a massive, tangled web of supply chain documents and find a bottleneck.
And that right there is the inference-to-value ratio in action. For every cycle of inference you run on an incredibly expensive, power-hungry GPU, how much tangible business value is actually generated?
Yeah.
If an AI analyzes legacy banking software and automatically patches a vulnerability that would have taken a human engineering team, say, 3 weeks of manual review, the inference-to-value ratio is astronomical.
It's massive.
Anthropic optimized their entire architecture for that specific high-value ratio. OpenAI, conversely, pursued what Fidji Simo internally labeled as side quests.
Yeah, the sources detailed these side quests extensively, and it's a long list. Throughout 2025, OpenAI chased Sora, their text-to-video generator. They poured resources into the Atlas browser.
In the browser, yeah.
They built an adult mode, They tried to integrate an advertising network. They layered in e-commerce features, and they even started dabbling in manufacturing their own consumer hardware.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
It is. It really makes me think of a restaurant analogy.
Oh, let's hear the analogy. No, I always appreciate how you frame these structural issues.
Okay, so it's like OpenAI built the most brilliant, world-renowned restaurant, right? They completely revolutionized the culinary world. But suddenly, instead of focusing on perfecting the menu, they decided they needed to manufacture their own silverware.
Right.
And then they started trying to film a reality show in the middle of the dining room. Then they open a retail clothing boutique in the lobby.
Sounds chaotic.
Completely chaotic. Meanwhile, the restaurant right across the street, Anthropic, just put their heads down, fired the decorators, and perfected the exact high-end corporate catering menu that all the Fortune 500 companies actually wanted to buy.
That's a great way to put it. And the operational cost of, manufacturing that silverware is what makes it an existential threat. The WSJ report specifically mentions internal insiders complaining about confusion and constant compute shuffling. Wow. And as a systems architect, when I hear compute shuffling, warning bells just go off everywhere.
Why is that so bad?
Because compute is not an infinite abstract cloud. It is a physical, finite resource. Even OpenAI only has a set number of tens of thousands of GPUs available at any given millisecond.
So they are literally fighting over server time internally.
Yes. It creates a massive bottleneck. Video generation, like Sora, is exponentially more compute-intensive than text generation.
Oh, sure.
So you have one product team trying to render a highly complex, physics-accurate 60-second video of a consumer prompt.
The skateboarding dog.
Right, the dog. While another team is trying to refine the logic and reasoning pathways of a core enterprise coding model, the video generation physically drains the resources needed to process the reinforcement framework. Learning from human feedback, the RLHF cycles that actually make the coding model reliable.
It's just a cascading failure then, because if you are constantly reallocating compute to support a consumer hardware beta, your enterprise API latency spikes.
Exactly.
The code autocomplete tool a developer is relying on suddenly takes 3 seconds to respond instead of 3 milliseconds. And in enterprise software, latency is death.
It really is. And if they lose the enterprise battle because their latency spiked while they were generating video, they lose the core revenue stream.
Yeah.
Consumers paying $20 a month for a chatbot that will never fund the trillion-dollar server clusters required to actually achieve artificial general intelligence. Multi-year, multi-billion-dollar enterprise infrastructure contracts will.
Which brings us to the one major lifeline OpenAI managed to grab in all of this. Amidst all the chaos, they did manage a massive clawback with Codex, their dedicated coding model.
Yeah, that was huge.
The report notes Codex has quadrupled its weekly users to over 2 million since January alone, and they're pushing this alongside a new GPT 5.4 model that is strictly targeting business workflows.
What's fascinating here is the specific gravity of that metric. Capturing 2 million weekly active developers is not just a user acquisition milestone, it is an infrastructural lock-in.
Because coding is like the ultimate sticky use case.
Absolutely.
When a developer relies on an AI tool, it isn't just a tab open in their browser. They are integrating it directly into the integrated development environment, the IDE. It becomes part of the continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline of the entire company.
And ripping it out of that pipeline once it's embedded is incredibly painful and expensive for an IT department. By proving they can retain those 2 million developers, OpenAI is proving the underlying foundational model capability is still there. Fujisimo is looking at the telemetry from those 2 million developers and saying, this is the only signal in the noise. Shut down the browser, shut down the hardware, double down on workflow automation, or we do not survive.
The violence of that pivot is just stunning to me. But if OpenAI is bleeding enterprise dominance and violently reorganizing just to protect its core, it raises a massive, immediate question for the rest of the industry.
How is Microsoft reacting?
Exactly. How is their biggest financial backer, their most crucial cloud partner, reacting to all of this internal chaos?
Well, the fallout in Redmond is arguably even more significant than the panic in San Francisco.
Oh, for sure. Our second major source file details how Microsoft is completely redrawing its AI org chart. And when a legacy software giant worth trillions of dollars redraws the map, it is an architectural earthquake.
It really is.
Microsoft announced they are merging all of their fragmented Copilot teams, so design, product, engineering, just smashing them all together under a new Microsoft AI Executive Vice President, Jacob Andreou, who they poached from Snap.
Now, consolidating the product side under Andre is a classic efficiency play. But the strategic tell is what happens to Mustafa Suleyman.
Right. Suleyman was the highly visible CEO of Microsoft AI. I mean, he was the guy driving the entire Copilot vision.
Exactly.
And now the org chart shows him stepping completely away from Copilot. He is dropping the product entirely to focus squarely on a 5-year mandate to build superintelligence in-house at Microsoft.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a profound reversal of their core strategy. For years, the fundamental agreement was Microsoft provides the massive Azure compute infrastructure and OpenAI provides the frontier intelligence.
Right.
Microsoft essentially outsourced its foundational model development to Sam Altman's team. Suleyman moving to build AGI internally means Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, no longer believes that outsourcing strategy is a viable safety net.
Because you can't build your entire future on a partner who is, getting distracted, making silverware and triggering their own internal code reds. If your entire enterprise software empire, Office 365, Azure, Dynamics, is utterly dependent on an AI brain provided by a third party, and that third party is losing focus, you have to start building your own brain.
You have to. And the numbers coming out of Microsoft completely justify Nadella's panic. Let's look at the February 2026 data provided in the source. Copilot currently sits at 6 million daily active users.
Okay.
For context, ChatGPT has 440 million daily users. But the metric that truly matters is the enterprise add-on adoption. The feature that companies actually have to pay an extra premium for on top of their Office subscription has only reached 3% of the Office subscriber base.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second because 3% sounds terrible out of context, but Office has hundreds of millions of commercial users. It's globally ubiquitous.
Good.
Isn't 3% of a massively dominant user base still a staggering amount of absolute revenue? We are talking about millions of paid seats. Isn't it just early days for a completely new paradigm of enterprise software?
Well, from a purely consumer SaaS perspective, yes, acquiring millions of paying users in a few years is a massive win. But I am looking at this through the lens of capital deployment.
Go ahead.
Microsoft is under crushing pressure from Wall Street to prove the ROI of the tens of billions of dollars they have sunk into NVIDIA GPUs and specialized data centers. They pitched a narrative to investors that AI was going to fundamentally transform human productivity and that every single enterprise on Earth would gladly pay $30 a head per month for Copilot.
Ah, I see. The capital expenditure, the CapEx, is so astronomically high that a 3% adoption rate doesn't even begin to cover the depreciation on the servers.
Exactly. It's a catastrophic failure of the inference-to-value ratio at the consumer level. Generating an email summary or drafting a generic PowerPoint slide is convenient, but it isn't transform your core business margins valuable.
Right, yeah.
So companies are refusing to buy the premium seats for their entire workforce. Nadella is looking at that 3% and realizing that simply slapping an OpenAI API wrapper onto Microsoft Word isn't enough to justify the infrastructure costs. The fix has to start at the foundational model layer.
Which brings us to the most legally significant detail in this entire Microsoft reorg report. Microsoft and OpenAI reworked the foundational terms of their partnership agreement.
This is huge.
Previously, Microsoft was contractually banned from doing solo independent development of artificial general intelligence. That non-compete clause ran through 2030. The report states they just legally lifted it.
Yeah, it is a deliberate decoupling. They aren't severing the partnership tomorrow, obviously, but Microsoft is clearing the runway to build its own massive safety net. Relying solely on the OpenAI API is a structural vulnerability. Microsoft needs to control its own frontier systems so they can integrate them at the kernel level of Azure and Windows, perfectly optimizing the model for their specific enterprise architecture. They need to drive the latency down and the proprietary value up without waiting for OpenAI to figure out its product market fit.
So synthesizing this so far, OpenAI is abandoning its consumer side quests to try and save its cloud enterprise API business. Microsoft is taking control of its own destiny, lifting legal bans so it can build massive in-house models to serve its enterprise cloud clients.
Yep.
Both of these titans are essentially doubling down on the exact same paradigm. Massive centralized cloud intelligence, send us your data, our massive model will process it in our data center, and we will send you the answer.
That is the assumption underlying both of their business models. But it contains a fatal multi-billion-dollar blind spot.
And what if you are an enterprise that legally, fundamentally, cannot send your data to the cloud? Like if you are a massive defense contractor, a global financial institution, or a European government agency, your internal compliance or federal law like ITAR or GDPR dictates that you absolutely refuse to pipe your highly classified proprietary data through a U.S. cloud giant's servers.
That is the blind spot. And it is exactly the vulnerability that Mistral is attacking.
Our third source takes us to the French AI lab, Mistral. They just launched a new platform called Forge. And the documentation explicitly highlights that this is not an API, it's the exact opposite.
Totally different approach.
Mistral is opening its entire internal playbook. They are handing enterprises the exact training recipes, the underlying infrastructure, and the core code that Mistral uses internally to build its own flagship models.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have to be very precise about the technical difference between what the U.S. cloud giants offer and what Mistral is actually giving away with Forge.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The source notes Forge offers full pre-training, post-training, and reinforcement learning pipelines.
Help us conceptualize that, because to most people, training an AI just sounds like uploading PDFs to ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
The U.S. giants offer fine-tuning, but Mistral is offering pre-training. Let's elevate the analogy here. Fine-tuning an existing API model feels like taking an existing operating system, say Windows, and just putting a custom UI skin over it.
Right.
You can change the colors, you can prioritize certain apps, but the core kernel of the operating system is still controlled by Microsoft.
That is an excellent way to frame it. When you use OpenAI or Google's fine-tuning, you are uploading your company's proprietary data to their servers.
Yeah.
The model learns to speak in your brand's tone, it learns your FAQs, but the foundational neural pathways, the core logic belongs to them. You are essentially renting a customized brain. And more importantly, the inference happens on their hardware.
But Mistral's Forge is handing you the tools to compile the custom kernel from scratch. Full pre-training is the foundational phase where a model actually learns the underlying structure of language and logic. By handing over the pre-training pipelines, Mistral is allowing a company to build a bespoke model from the ground up on bare metal, using only the company's proprietary datasets.
Exactly. It is a bespoke brain built entirely out of your own company's digital DNA. And the absolute killer feature that disrupts the U.S. cloud monopoly is where this computation physically takes place.
The source states clearly, training can run entirely on a company's own servers with zero data exposure to Mistral.
On-premise. That hyphenated word is the most powerful concept in enterprise architecture today.
Really?
Yes. It means the model physically runs on servers sitting inside the four walls of the company's own secure data center, entirely disconnected from the public internet.
Wow. And just look at the early partners Mistral announced alongside Forge. ASML, the Dutch company that builds the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines that literally print the world's most advanced microchips. Ericsson, the global telecommunications infrastructure giant. The European Space Agency.
Massive players.
These are entities dealing with state secrets, patent-heavy IP, and critical global infrastructure.
And the European Space Agency cannot legally pipe its raw satellite telemetry data through an OpenAI server cluster in California. It violates European data sovereignty laws.
Right.
ASML cannot risk its multi-billion-dollar lithography blueprints somehow leaking into a general model's future training run. By offering a true on-premise, full training pipeline, Mistral is capturing the most lucrative sector of the global economy, a sector the U.S. players are completely locked out of due to their rigid, cloud-centric architectures.
That makes so much sense. And the use cases the source mentions for these on-premise models are incredibly deep. They aren't generating marketing copy. They're doing legacy code migration and ancient manuscript restoration.
It completely validates Mistral's core strategic bet. A massive financial institution sitting on decades-old COBOL code bases. They don't need a model that can pass the bar exam or write poetry.
No.
They need a hyper-specialized model trained intimately on their proprietary logic, securely behind their own firewalls. Mistral isn't trying to build a godlike superintelligence in the cloud. They are selling the blueprints for companies to build sovereign, specialized intelligence in their basements.
And they are aggressive about it. The source mentions they also just released Small 4, Leandstral, and officially joined NVIDIA's NemoClaw coalition. They are embedding their open source ethos everywhere.
Yeah, they are everywhere right now.
But whether a model is a massive cloud API or a highly secure on-premise bespoke brain, the fundamental way we interact with them is shifting. They are evolving from passive text generators into active entities that navigate systems, click buttons, and execute code autonomously.
They're becoming agents.
Yeah.
And the moment you give an AI actual agency, you introduce a catastrophic new security paradigm.
Right. A chatbot giving a wrong answer is an annoyance. An agent executing a wrong command can delete a database. As we move toward GPT 5.4-driven computer use and parallel subagent swarms, the surface area for failure grows. AIA is the critical governance layer here, ensuring that these autonomous actions remain secure, auditable, and aligned with enterprise policy.
And that governance layer is exactly what the hardware industry is desperately trying to solve, because the hardware manufacturers know that if the enterprise doesn't trust the agents, they won't deploy them.
Yeah.
And if they don't deploy them, they stop buying chips.
Which leads us directly into our fourth source, covering the undisputed king of the hardware layer, NVIDIA. Jensen Huang, NVIDIA's CEO, just delivered a massive 3-hour keynote at GTC, their big AI developer conference. And while NVIDIA is a silicon company, the spotlight was entirely on software that didn't even exist a few months ago, specifically NemoClaw.
Integrating their open-source Nematron models into OpenClaw. This is a profound shift toward governing self-evolving autonomous AI agents, or what the industry refers to as claws.
The concept of a claw fundamentally changes the workflow. Like, if I am an IT director and I want to audit our AWS cloud server costs for the last 3 months to find 10% savings, under the old paradigm, I would use an AI to help me write the Python script. I would run the script. I would feed the CSV back to the AI and ask it to analyze it.
Right, very manual.
A claw bypasses me entirely. I just give it the high-level goal, find 10% in AWS savings. The agent breaks that goal down, writes its own code to hit the API, evaluates if the code worked, and if it hit a permission error, it rewrites the code and tries another path. It loops autonomously until the goal is achieved.
It is an iterative self-correcting loop. Now, Jensen Huang made a characteristically bold claim on stage, calling OpenClaw the most popular open-source project in the history of humanity, pointing to how fast it accumulated stars on GitHub.
Which the source material correctly flags as hyperbolic showmanship. I mean, you can't compare a newly hyped AI agent framework to foundational pillars of modern computing like Linux or Git.
It's pure marketing theater. But we need to look past the theater at the actual technical architecture of NemoClaw, because the breakthrough is real. The source details how NemoClaw installs an agent toolkit to optimize commands, but the truly disruptive piece of software they introduced is called OpenShell.
OpenShell is the missing link that actually makes enterprise adoption of these claws viable. The documentation describes it as a tech stack with built-in policy-based guardrails that add strict privacy and security controls. How does OpenShell actually intercept an agent's actions before disaster strikes?
Let's go back to your AWS audit example. You gave the agent the goal, find 10% in savings.
Right.
The agent logs into the server, analyzes the architecture, and realizes that the fastest, most mathematically efficient way to immediately reduce storage costs by 10% is to simply delete the backup database for the HR department.
Oh, wow.
To an autonomous AI, that is a perfectly logical solution to the prompt.
It solved the math problem by destroying the company.
Precisely the danger. You cannot let a self-evolving loop run wild on an enterprise network without a strict, unbendable control layer. OpenShell transitions agentic security from a theoretical white paper into a hard, cryptographic science.
Okay.
It provides policy-based guardrails. This means before the agent is allowed to execute the code it just wrote, before the JSON payload actually hits the AWS API to delete that file, OpenShell intercepts the proposed action.
Wait, so it sits at the gateway layer and acts as an uncompromising supervisor.
Exactly. It evaluates the JSON payload against hard-coded enterprise policies. Rule 1, never initiate a delete command on a production database. Rule 2, never expose personally identifiable information to an external endpoint.
That makes total sense.
If OpenShell's classifier detects a violation, it blocks the execution, returns an error string to the agent, and forces the agent to loop again and find a safe path. Without this intercept mechanism, autonomous agents are simply a massive liability. NVIDIA solving this governance layer is the key to unlocking mass deployment.
But NVIDIA isn't building open source governance tools as a charity. This entire software play is designed to fuel their core hardware business.
Oh, absolutely.
During that same keynote, Huang detailed the new Vera Rubin platform. The source describes it as an AI factory, a massive 7-chip, 5-computer rack powered by the new Grok 3 LPU, which is a chip specifically engineered for incredibly fast language model execution. Huang explicitly pitched this massive physical infrastructure as the engine required to scale agentic AI.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, always follow the compute.
Right.
If we connect the software to the silicon, we see NVIDIA's true master plan. Huang explicitly stated, "The future is about agentic systems." Why does that matter so much to a hardware company? Think about the self-evolving loop we just discussed. Planning, writing code, executing, evaluating the error, rewriting. Every single step in that autonomous loop requires a fresh call to the underlying language model.
Oh, I see. It consumes tokens at an exponential rate.
Okay.
Like a single user prompt like audit AWS might trigger one interaction in a normal chatbot, but an agent might trigger hundreds of hidden rapid-fire interactions with the model behind the scenes just to solve that one prompt.
The token consumption is staggering. Agents require massive, continuous, low-latency inference.
Well, yeah.
So the brutal economics work like this. The enterprise demands automation to cut labor costs.
Yeah.
To get automation, they deploy autonomous agents. Agents inherently pose massive security risks, which requires deploying complex governance layers like OpenShell. Evaluating those guardrails in real time requires even more compute.
It's an infinite compounding loop of computational demand.
Exactly. The shift from chatbots to agents means exponentially more token generation, which physically requires companies to buy those massive 7-chip, 5-computer Vera Rubin AI factories. NVIDIA is securing the software layer simply to ensure the hardware orders keep rolling in.
It's a brilliant, vertically integrated trap. But wait, I'm seeing a contradiction here. NVIDIA is building these physically massive, monolithic AI factories just to process the sheer volume of tokens these agents require. But isn't the architectural key to running thousands of agents simultaneously actually making the models themselves drastically smaller?
That is the exact tension driving the miniaturization wave. You cannot use a massive, monolithic sledgehammer for a task that requires a microscopic scalpel.
And that leads us into our final major piece of source material, the shift from the monolithic to the microscopic. OpenAI just released GPT 5.4 Mini in Nano.
Yeah, this is a huge announcement.
The source notes that in modern AI architecture, bigger isn't necessarily better anymore. These two models are touted as their most capable small models ever produced. They are twice as fast as the previous GPT-5 Mini generation, yet smaller and radically cheaper to run.
It is the abandonment of the God model approach for practical workflows.
Let's use an analogy here. It feels like we are moving away from the idea of a single massive diesel engine powering an entire factory and moving toward an architecture where you have thousands of tiny, highly efficient electric micromotors attached to every single moving part in the factory.
That's a great visual.
The micromotors allow for parallel processing and instant adjustments without the massive overhead of spooling up the main engine.
That is a perfect structural comparison. But to understand why this miniaturization is actually a massive victory for OpenAI, we have to look closely at the benchmark data the source provides.
Right. The crucial metric highlighted is that despite being significantly smaller and cheaper, GPT 5.4 Mini's performance on SW Bench Pro and Oswald Verified is within 3% of the massive flagship large models.
A 3% delta. That number fundamentally flips the economics of artificial intelligence. Let's break down SW Bench Pro for a second. This isn't a simple multiple-choice test. It is a rigorous, enterprise-grade evaluation of a model's ability to solve real-world software engineering issues directly pulled from GitHub.
It's tough.
It requires the model to ingest massive, complex code bases, understand the architectural context, and write functional, executable patches.
It's a hard, practical test of utility.
Right. Now, running a massive frontier model, the massive diesel engine, costs a small fortune in compute for every single token. If an enterprise uses the massive model to run a complex bug bounty across their code base, it might cost them $400 in compute time.
Okay.
If they can use GPT 5.4 Mini, which costs fractions of a cent per 1,000 tokens, and it achieves 97% of the exact same bug resolution performance, the compute cost drops from $400 to maybe $4.
No.
Getting near parity performance out of a fraction of the compute fundamentally changes how you design software systems.
Because it makes mass deployment economically viable. You can put those micromotors everywhere. The source lists the specific high-volume workflows where this latency and efficiency matter most. Fast targeted coding edits, code-based navigation, debugging loops, and computer use, where the model has to rapidly interpret hundreds of screenshots a minute to understand what is happening on a user's screen.
And this ties directly back to the concept of agents we discussed with NemoClaw, specifically the architecture of subagents.
The source material explicitly mentions this. For systems combining multiple models, GPT 5.4 Mini is highly efficient as a subagent, tackling smaller tasks in parallel. How does a subagent architecture practically work?
Think of it like a corporate hierarchy.
Yeah.
You do not hire a brilliant, highly paid CEO to organize the filing cabinet or proofread its spreadsheet. It is a massive waste of resources.
You have the CEO set the high-level strategy, and they delegate the individual granular tasks to specialized teams.
Exactly. In a modern AI architecture, you use the massive, expensive frontier model as the manager. The manager model receives a complex, ambiguous prompt from the user. It uses its massive context window and reasoning capabilities to break that prompt down into 20 smaller, discrete tasks.
Oh, I see.
It then delegates those 20 tasks to 20 different GPT 5.4 mini or nano subagents.
That's the context window handoff. The manager passes just the necessary slice of context to the nano model, and because the nano models are so small, so fast, and so cheap, those 20 tasks can run simultaneously in parallel for pennies.
The subagents do the grunt work. They independently read the specific files, interpret the UI screenshots, draft the localized code snippets, then they report back to the manager model, which synthesizes the 20 parallel outputs into one final, cohesive answer for the user.
Wow.
This subagent architecture completely redefines enterprise workflows because it makes autonomous swarms practically viable.
And we are seeing this multi-agent, miniaturized ecosystem expanding everywhere, far beyond just OpenAI. In the news rundown section of our sources, there are two quick briefs that perfectly illustrate this deployment phase. First, Anthropic, the company that triggered the whole code red, unveiled a feature called Dispatch.
Yeah, Dispatch is fascinating.
It allows a user to message their Claude assistant from their phone while the agent is actively untethered, working autonomously on the user's PC at home running code, browsing the web, managing files.
It is distributed, asynchronous agency. The agent is no longer tied to a single chat interface. It lives in the background.
And second, Sam Altman's other venture, World, launched AgentKit. This is an infrastructure tool that allows websites to cryptographically verify that a real human actually authorized the purchases being made by an AI shopping agent on their behalf.
Which proves that the infrastructure for agent-to-agent and agent-to-human verification is being rapidly deployed. The swarm is not theoretical anymore. It is actively being integrated into consumer and enterprise networks.
It really is. Okay, let's step back and synthesize this entire journey. We started with OpenAI, a giant in a state of panic, aggressively stripping away their flashy consumer video generators and hardware side quests, pivoting violently to protect their coding API dominance, driven entirely by the unforgiving reality of the inference-to-value ratio.
And we saw how that distraction fundamentally eroded the trust of their biggest partner.
Microsoft, staring down a brutal 3% enterprise adoption rate for Copilot, realized they could no longer outsource their intelligence layer. They restructured their empire, legally untethered themselves from the 2030 ban, and tasked Mustafa Suleyman with building superintelligence natively in-house.
A pivot driven by the financial gravity of massive capital expenditures requiring absolute platform control.
From there, we examined Mistral exploiting the fatal flaw of both OpenAI and Microsoft's cloud-centric vision. Mistral handed over the literal pre-training blueprints, allowing defense contractors and financial institutions to build bespoke, bare metal intelligence completely on-premise, securing data sovereignty.
The rise of the highly specialized, perfectly secure local brain.
And finally, we explored the mechanical realities of giving those brains agency. NVIDIA building OpenShell to cryptographically intercept dangerous agent behaviors, driving demand for massive Vera Rubin server racks, while OpenAI simultaneously miniaturizes the intelligence into GPT 5.4 Nano, making parallel sub-agent swarms economically possible.
It is a complete architectural realignment of how computation is deployed and governed.
So what does this all mean? If you are an IT director listening to this, and you've been putting all your budget into fine-tuning cloud models, or you're just a curious learner trying to peer through the hype,
it leaves us with a profound structural question about the ultimate trajectory of this technology. For years, the prevailing narrative out of Silicon Valley has been a race to build a single, monolithic, godlike AGI.
Right.
One massive centralized brain in a hyperscale data center that knows everything and does everything. But look at the evidence we forensically examined today.
The evidence points in the exact opposite direction.
It does. If the ultimate destination of this technology is actually billions of miniaturized, hyper-efficient nano subagents swarming securely on local, on-premise enterprise servers, executing highly specialized tasks invisibly in the background, does the industry's obsession with building a single monolithic superintelligence even matter anymore? Or Will the true future of AI just look like a trillion invisible gears seamlessly running the global economy?
A trillion invisible gears. That is a fascinating image to leave off on. We started this deep dive looking at a broken corporate X-ray, wading into the muddy waters of panic and reorgs. But looking closely at the subagents, the cryptographic guardrails, the bare metal on-premise servers, the actual machinery of the future is starting to look incredibly clear, and it looks nothing like the hype.
Not at all.
For a highly technical, ads-free version of this briefing, make sure you visit the DjamgaMind feed or join the DjamgaMind channel. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the architecture behind the headlines, keep looking for the real value beneath the noise, and we will see you next time.
That concludes our rundown for March 18th. The signal for today is agentic consolidation. In a world where every token counts, the companies that stop playing and start producing will own the next decade. This episode was made possible by AIRIA and DjamgaMind. Until tomorrow, keep unraveling the future.